My girlfriend used me as an ATM for 10 years, and I spent $100K on her daughter. But when I saw the wedding invitations with her deadbeat father's name who paid nothing, I cut the money, and the wedding got canceled. I'm 42 years old, work in financial consulting, and I need to tell this story because what happened a few months ago basically freed me from a decade of being an ATM with feelings. The thing is, I was with my girlfriend Tina for 10 years, 10 complete years, paying for absolutely everything for her and her daughter Victoria, and in the end, they treated me like I was a complete stranger. Like those 10 years meant nothing. I guess I should start from the beginning, when I met Tina and Victoria. But the truth is, there's not much drama in that part. I mean, it was pretty normal at first. I met Tina at a work event. She was a friend of a colleague. We connected, started dating, and Victoria was like 8 years old at the time. The biological father, Raymond, had already taken off years before, like the classic deadbeat who would show up once a year with empty promises and then disappear for months, and Victoria worshipped him anyway. Can you believe it? Every time that guy showed up, it was like he was freaking Santa Claus. And I, who was there every single day, was like part of the furniture. The first few years were good, honestly. I moved in with them like a year and a half into dating. I bought a decent house in a good neighborhood because I wanted Victoria to have stability. You know, good schools, safe neighborhood, all that. Tina didn't work, never worked the entire time we were together. There was always some excuse, whether it was she needed to take care of Victoria, or she was looking but couldn't find anything she liked, or she had migraines, whatever. And I, like an idiot, said it was no problem, that I could support the family. That's what real men did, or some stupid thing like that I had gotten into my head. I paid the mortgage, the utilities, food, clothes, vacations, everything came out of my pocket. Victoria called me Vincent, never Dad or anything like that, and that was fine, I guess. I didn't expect her to see me as her father when Raymond was still, technically in the picture, even if it was a blurry picture that appeared and disappeared whenever he felt like it. When Victoria was in high school, she started talking about college, wanted to study marketing or communications or something like that. I'm not completely sure because she changed her mind every 2 months, but the thing is, I knew it was expensive, and I started saving specifically for that. Tina and I never got married. She always said we didn't need a piece of paper to prove our love, and I accepted that too, like an idiot. Looking back, I should have seen all the red flags, but I was blind, or, I don't know, in love maybe, or just used to the dynamic. So, anyway, Victoria graduated from high school, applied to several universities, got accepted to a pretty good but expensive private one, like very expensive, and when the acceptance letter came, both of them looked at me with those puppy dog eyes waiting for me to say yes, that of course I would pay. And that's what I did, $40,000. That was the total cost of Victoria's 4 years of college. $40,000 that came directly out of my bank account. From my work, from getting up every day at 6 in the morning and putting up with difficult clients and endless meetings. And not just that, when she was in her sophomore year, she said she needed a car to go back and forth from campus, that taking the bus was uncomfortable and took away from her study time. So I bought her a 2018 Honda Civic. Nothing luxurious but a good reliable car, like $20,000 or so. She said, thanks, of course, but it was a casual thanks, like, when you tip the waiter, you know what I mean? There wasn't that moment of, oh my God, Vincent, thank you so much, this means the world to me. It was more like, oh cool, thanks, and that's it. Tina didn't make a big deal about it either. It was like it was my obligation. Like just by being with her, I automatically had to pay for everything related to her daughter. Victoria graduated last year, in May, I think, or maybe June. Graduation ceremonies are all the same, honestly. It's hot as hell, and they last like 3 hours. I went to the graduation, of course, paid for the graduation ring too and the special dress she wanted for the ceremony, and there was Raymond, showed up just in time for photos, with a smile from ear to ear like he had done something, like he had contributed anything to that achievement. Victoria ran to him, hugged him, they cried together. It was a very emotional scene according to everyone, and I was standing there on the side like an extra in my own life. After graduating, Victoria stayed living with us. Didn't get a job. Well, technically she looked, but nothing she liked or that paid enough according to her, so she continued not working, not paying rent obviously, eating my food, using my internet, everything free. Then, in February of this year, February or March, I don't remember exactly, Victoria came home all excited, saying her boyfriend had proposed, that they were getting married, that it was going to be the most beautiful wedding in the world, blah, blah, blah. The boyfriend is a decent guy, I guess. Worked in something tech-related. Knew him from college. His parents had some money but weren't rich. Victoria immediately started planning the wedding. Like the next day, she already had binders and magazines and a Pinterest full of ideas. And when I asked her when they were thinking of doing it, she said August 3rd, so like in 6 months, and that she wanted a big wedding, elegant, with like 250 people. I did the math in my head quickly. A wedding of 250 people was going to easily cost $50,000 or $60,000, maybe more depending on how luxurious she wanted it, and I waited for her to mention the money topic. I didn't have to wait long. Like a week later, Tina sat down with me in the living room and basically said Victoria was very excited but worried about costs, that the boyfriend's parents were going to pay part but not all, if I could help. And I knew what that meant. Help meant pay for everything, because that was always the dynamic. I told her yes, of course, that I wanted Victoria to have the wedding of her dreams, and Tina gave me a kiss and told me I was the best, that Victoria was so lucky to have me in her life, all those things you say when someone is about to give you a ton of money. Victoria came later that day and thanked me too, even hugged me, and said it was going to be perfect, that I was amazing for doing this for her. I felt good in that moment. I'm not gonna lie. I felt like I was finally being recognized, like my role in her life meant something. The following weeks were crazy with wedding planning. Victoria and Tina were going to see venues, trying food, looking at flowers, all that process, and I was receiving the bills. Deposit for the venue, $3,000. Deposit for catering, $5,000. Deposit for the photographer, $2,500. And it just kept going and going. Every week there was something new that needed to be paid for, and I just nodded and transferred the money. In April, like 2 months after they announced the engagement, I told Victoria I needed to give her the guest list from my side. You know, my friends, some work colleagues, my brother and his family who live in another state, in total like 20 people. It wasn't much, considering the wedding was going to have 250 people. Victoria got weird, like she tensed up completely and said she was going to review it with Tina and let me know, and I thought it was strange but didn't give it much importance. I figured maybe they needed to organize the space better or something like that. Like a month went by and she didn't tell me anything about my guest list. Every time I asked, Victoria would change the subject or say they were still finalizing. Numbers. And I was starting to feel something weird was happening, but I didn't want to be paranoid. Then one day, I was having lunch with my friend Lucas. I've known him since college. He's basically my best friend, and he casually mentioned he had received a wedding announcement from Victoria in the mail. I asked him what he meant by announcement, and he said it was like a pretty card announcing the wedding, but it wasn't a formal invitation. That it didn't have the venue details or time or anything. I just said Victoria was getting married to her boyfriend on August 3rd. I froze there in the restaurant with my sandwich half-eaten because I hadn't sent any announcement, didn't even know those existed. And if Victoria was sending announcements, that meant the formal invitations were about to go out or had already gone out. That night I got home and looked in the study where Victoria had all her wedding stuff organized. Yes, I invaded her privacy, but at that moment, I didn't care. And I found a pile of wedding announcements and also found the formal invitations already printed ready to be sent. I grabbed an invitation and read it, and there it was in elegant gold letters. Victoria's parents have the honor of inviting you to their daughter's wedding, and the names that appeared as parents were Raymond and Tina. Raymond and Tina, not Vincent. Not the guy who had paid for every damn thing in Victoria's life for 10 years, but Raymond, the deadbeat who showed up twice a year empty-handed. I felt like I had been kicked in the stomach, literally felt nauseous, and I checked all the invitations thinking maybe it was a mistake, but no. They all said the same thing, Raymond and Tina. I went downstairs with an invitation in my hand. Tina was watching TV in the living room, and Victoria was in her room. I showed the invitation to Tina and asked her what the hell this was, and she looked at me like I was crazy for being upset. She told me they had sat down to do numbers, and there, simply wasn't space for my 20 guests, that they had to make cuts, that she was very sorry, but that's how things are sometimes. I asked her then why Raymond was on the invitation as a parent, if he hadn't done anything, literally nothing. And she said, well, technically he was the biological father and Victoria wanted him to be included, and that I had to understand that for Victoria, it was important to have her real dad on the invitation. Real dad. Those were her exact words, like I had been a fake dad all these years. I asked her if I was going to be at the wedding at least, if I had a place to sit, and Tina said yes, of course, that I was going to be there. But when I asked her where I was going to be seated, she got nervous and admitted I'd probably be at a table in the back with some acquaintances of the groom's family. A table in the back, after paying for the entire damn wedding, after paying for her college, her car, her entire life. I told Tina this was a complete disrespect, that I couldn't believe they were doing this, and she got defensive, saying I was overreacting, that I should be happy to be part of Victoria's special day, that not everything was about me. I went for a walk because if I stayed, I was going to say things I was going to regret, or at least that's what I thought at the time. Like a week later, we had a scheduled dinner at the groom's parents' house. It was like a pre-wedding family dinner so everyone could get to know each other better. And I went because, well, I was still paying for everything and supposedly I was part of the family. The groom's parents, especially the mom Evelyn, were nice, a little pretentious maybe, but nothing terrible. The house was nice. Dinner was good. All very proper. In the middle of dinner, Victoria stood up with her wine glass and said she wanted to make an announcement that she had made a very special decision about the ceremony, and we all went quiet waiting. She said that after thinking about it a lot, she had decided that her father, Raymond, was going to walk her down the aisle, that it was very important to her to have her dad in that significant moment, and everyone applauded and said how lovely, and Raymond, who was there because obviously they had invited him, yes, stood up and hugged her, and both cried. I sat there feeling like I was in an alternate dimension, like this can't really be happening. This can't be the end of 10 years of sacrifice and support. Everyone kept eating and chatting like nothing happened, and I could only think about every damn check I had signed, every damn bill I had paid, every damn time I had put Victoria's needs before my own. I waited until dinner was over, helped clean up even though nobody else did, and when we were ready to leave, I asked to make a toast. Victoria and Tina looked at me surprised because I'm not one to make toasts generally, but I raised my glass, and everyone else raised theirs too. I said something like, I want to toast to Victoria and her upcoming wedding. I've had the privilege of being part of her life for 10 years, of supporting her education, of watching her become the woman she is today, and I'm very proud of her. Everyone was smiling and nodding. Then I continued, that said, I've decided I won't be able to contribute financially to the wedding after all. I've thought a lot about this, and I think it's important that the people who are being honored on the invitations and actively participating in the ceremony be the ones to cover the costs. So, Raymond and Tina, I wish you lots of luck organizing everything. I'm sure it will be beautiful. And I sat down. The silence was brutal, like you could hear a fly. Everyone stared at me like I had just killed someone. Victoria's mouth was open. Tina was pale. Raymond was looking at his plate. Evelyn, the groom's mom, looked confused, and I felt incredibly calm for the first time in weeks. Victoria started stuttering something about how I couldn't do this, that they had already made all the deposits, that everything was organized, and I said very calmly that wasn't my problem, that if they wanted to treat me like a stranger in their lives, then treat me like a stranger completely, without my money. Tina started crying, saying I was ruining everything. How could I be so cruel? And I simply stood up and left. Took an Uber home because I had come with them in the car. The next few days were chaotic. Victoria called me every hour crying and screaming. Tina sent me text messages saying we needed to talk, that I was being irrational, that I had to reconsider. But I didn't respond. I called all the vendors I had hired, the venue, catering, photographer, flowers, everything, and canceled every contract. Some gave me back part of the deposit, others didn't. I lost like $15,000 total in non-refundable deposits. But honestly, I didn't care. It was worth every penny. We also had a joint bank account, Tina and I. Technically, it was mine, but I had given her access because she supposedly used it for household expenses. There was like $50,000 there that I was saving to eventually buy a bigger house. I transferred all that money to a new account, only in my name. Tina and Victoria came home like on the third day. I was working from home that day, and they came in with a clearly rehearsed plan. Tina was going to be the rational one, and Victoria was going to appeal to my emotions. Tina started saying she understood, I was hurt, that they had handled things badly, that they should have consulted me more, but that canceling everything was extreme, that we could fix it, that we could put my name on the invitations too, or something like that. Victoria said she loved me, that I was important to her, that she didn't want to get married without my support. All very nice, but I didn't believe it for a second. I told them to have whatever wedding they wanted, but without my money, that if Raymond was so important, let him pay. And Victoria screamed that Raymond didn't have money, that I knew he didn't have money, and I said exactly, so maybe you should honor the one who does have money and has been present. But it's too late for that. The conversation got uglier. Tina started bringing up things from the past, saying I had always been controlling with money, that I used money to manipulate them, which I had never done. I had never denied them anything, never conditioned my support on anything. I just paid and paid and paid without expecting anything in return except a minimum of respect. Victoria said I was horrible, that I was ruining the most important day of her life because of my ego, and something in me broke completely at that moment. I told them they had two options. They could apologize for real, not with empty words but with actions. They could postpone the wedding, redo the invitations correctly, including me as they should, give Raymond a minor role or no role, and try to rebuild some trust. Or they could leave my house immediately and figure things out on their own. Tina asked if I was ending things with her after 10 years, and I said she was ending 10 years by treating me the way they had treated me. They left that same afternoon, packed their things, not everything because there was too much, but the essentials, and went to live with a friend of Tina's named Cheryl, who lives like 30 minutes from there. I didn't cry when they left. I expected to feel something, sadness or regret or whatever, but I only felt relief. An immense relief, like a giant weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The next day, I changed the locks on the house. I know it sounds petty, but I didn't want them to just walk in whenever they wanted, and I spent the weekend organizing the house, taking all their stuff out of the closet, the bathroom, packing everything in boxes and leaving them in the garage so they could come pick them up whenever they wanted. Like a week later, I got a call from Raymond. From Raymond, the Saint Father who had never done anything wrong, and he asked me to reconsider, that Victoria was a good girl who made a mistake, that weddings are stressful and people make bad decisions, and if I could find it in my heart, the generosity to help pay for at least part of the wedding. I asked him how much he was going to put in, and he went silent. So I said exactly, you're going to put in 0. You're going to walk down that aisle without having contributed anything, and you want me to pay for the privilege of watching you do it? No thanks, Raymond. This one's all yours. He hung up without saying anything else. Victoria called me a few days later. She had changed tactics. She wasn't angry anymore, but sad and pleading, said all this was affecting her a lot, that her fiancé was stressed, that his parents were asking what was happening, that she just wanted to have a nice wedding, and I was making her feel terrible. I told her she had made me feel terrible first, that actions have consequences, and that expecting someone to pay for something while treating them like garbage isn't reasonable. She told me she had never treated me like garbage, that I was exaggerating everything, and I reminded her of the invitations, the exclusion of my guests, Raymond's role, everything, and she started crying, saying I was being cruel, that I didn't understand how hard this was for her. I hung up because I didn't have the energy to continue that circular conversation. Like a month later, we were already in July, I received a letter from Tina, a physical letter in the mail, not a text or email but a handwritten letter. It basically said Victoria was falling into depression over all this, that she had lost weight, that she cried every day, that the stress was ruining what should be the happiest time of her life, and that Tina was begging me to reconsider, not for her but for Victoria, who was practically my daughter or something like that 10 years should mean something. Letter ended saying that if I had any decency, I would do the right thing. I didn't respond to the letter, threw it in the trash. But I'm not going to lie. It affected me a little. I started questioning myself if I was being too harsh, if I should just swallow my pride and help anyway. But every time I started to feel guilty, I remembered the invitations with Raymond's name and not mine, and the guilt evaporated. Lucas kept me updated on some gossip that was circulating. Apparently, Cheryl Tina's friend had a big mouth and had told several people about the situation, so a lot of people knew I had cut funding for the wedding. Opinions were divided according to Lucas. Some thought I was right, that they had disrespected me. Others thought I was being vindictive and cruel. Honestly, I didn't care much what people thought. They weren't the ones who had spent over $100,000 in 10 years on people who clearly didn't value that sacrifice. In August, like a week before the wedding date, which was the 3rd, Lucas called me and told me he had heard Victoria had canceled the wedding. Well, technically, she had postponed it indefinitely, which is basically the same as canceling. Apparently, they couldn't gather enough money to have the wedding they wanted. Raymond, surprise, surprise, couldn't or wouldn't contribute anything significant. The groom's parents put in something, but not much, because they had already planned their own budget, and Tina obviously didn't have money because she had never worked. Victoria tried to do a smaller and cheaper wedding, but according to Lucas, she got so depressed with the idea of having to scale down all her plans that she simply decided to postpone it until they could save enough, which, considering she doesn't have a job and her boyfriend makes a normal salary, is going to take years. I didn't feel much emotion hearing that, neither happiness nor sadness, just a kind of quiet satisfaction that my actions had real consequences, that, for once in 10 years, I had set boundaries and maintained them. Like 2 weeks after the wedding date that didn't happen, Tina sent me a text, the first in weeks, saying she and Victoria were moving out of state, that a cousin of hers had offered to let them stay with her in North or South Carolina, I don't remember which, that they needed a fresh start away from all this. I didn't respond to that text either. Last week, we're in October now, Evelyn, the groom's mom, called me. I don't know how she got my number, probably Victoria gave it to her. And she yelled at me for like 20 minutes about how I had ruined her son and Victoria's lives. How because of me her son was depressed because his girlfriend was depressed. How I was a horrible and selfish man. Blah, blah, blah. I let her vent without interrupting, and when she finished, I asked her if she knew the whole story. If she knew I had paid $100,000 over 10 years and my name wasn't even on the wedding invitations. And she went quiet for a moment, and then said, that didn't justify ruining a wedding, that I should have been the bigger person and forgiven. I told her forgiveness is overrated when there's no genuine remorse on the other side, and I hung up. Now I'm here, alone in my house that suddenly feels bigger and quieter, with no one to support except myself. No surprise, bills for things Victoria needs. No constant drama about Raymond and his mythical importance in Victoria's life, despite his constant absence. I've been going out with friends more often, picked up hobbies I had abandoned. I'm considering traveling to Europe next year. Things I never did because there was always something to pay for Tina or Victoria. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing, if I was too harsh, if I should have given them another chance. But then, I remember how I felt when I saw those invitations, that feeling of being completely invisible and disposable, and I know I did exactly what I should have done. I set boundaries. I respected myself for the first time in 10 years. And if that makes me the villain in their versions of the story, well, so be it. I can live with that much better than I could live being a faceless, nameless ATM